All right, welcome to the show today. My guest today is Christine McDannell. She's an expert in the co-living space and a serial entrepreneur who has founded and successfully exited numerous companies. Today, her main project is Kindred.io, which is a Techstars-backed software platform for the co-living industry. I wanted to bring Christine on the show to find out how she built and sold some of her previous companies, what exactly co-living is and how this is changing the way we live, especially in modern cities, and also how she's building up her current project, Kindred.io. So Christine, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jane.
Of course. I'd love to talk about co-living and some of the projects you're working on today, but I'd love to get a bit of a sense of your background and your story with some of your previous ventures. So I was wondering if you could maybe just give us a sense of who you are with some of your previous companies that you've built and sold. I think maybe Cleanology would be a good one to talk about.
I'll even go back a little earlier than that. So I've been the girl that was selling candy bars in my backpack at school. I sold snow cones. I had a circus in my garage when I was a kid, and I charged admission. So honestly, entrepreneurship was always in my blood. My father was a business owner, so maybe I inherited it from him. So yes, and then Cleanology was my first official business. 2003, I was 23 years old and decided to start a cleaning company, but I didn't have any money at the time. And so I charged $300 worth of cleaning supplies and vacuum cleaners onto a credit card. And then I hired 2 or 3 women to teach me how to clean. And we cleaned these condos in downtown San Diego together. And I did that for a year and a half. And while I was cleaning every day, then I bartended at night to pay the bills and to get the company off the ground. So it was definitely not the easy way, but it was the right way, right? It was fun, I look back at that time and I have a lot of respect for people that start things from scratch without any funding.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. And it's interesting as well because you said you charged $300 supplies onto that credit card, but I read somewhere that it was already $45,000 in debt on that card, so that would have been a interesting starting point. So how was that starting from?
No, I know because I've shared this story multiple times. So yeah, it's been on other podcast interviews. And yes, exactly. I had $45,000 worth of credit card debt. So I think I only had $300 left on one of the cards that. And so that was totally maxed out.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And that's why I had a bartend at night. That's the main reason, was just because I had gotten into so much debt at such a young age. I would not recommend doing that. that was not a good idea. And that was just being young and silly. But yes, that's what happened. So again, we made it work. We paid it all back at least.
And what happened to Cleanology in the end?
Yeah, so I had that business for 6.5 years. So from 2003 to 2010. And then I sold it. I just at the 5-year mark was hey, maybe I should move on, do something different. I'd built, there was 37 employees, there was managers in place. It ran itself. I only had to do, actually, I didn't have to do anything. I probably didn't even have to go anymore, but I still came in every day and did the marketing because I liked it. But so I just got bored and, the business was ready, somebody else could take it over and have and this same guy to this day, so he bought it in 2010, same owner still has it, loves it. They're doing great, which is amazing. And that's actually the part I'm most excited about is all my businesses I've started all these years, 16 years, they're all still in business to this day.
That's amazing. That's a real testament as well. So you're not just building it and flogging it off and then it's all crumbling. You've actually built a business that can run without you, which I think is a true entrepreneur. So that's amazing. And what were some of the other businesses that you started over the last 16 years?
So Adopt a Christmas Tree was a really fun one because that one was seasonal. We rented out potted Christmas trees during the holidays. And we then would have you just water them, you decorate them, and then we'd have singing, dancing elves deliver them and do a cute little song and dance. And then they would pick the trees up after the holiday, and we would replant them here in San Diego, in East County, San Diego, every single year. I had that business almost 10 years. It's something like 32, I believe it's 32 million trees. The numbers might have changed since then. Get cut down in America just for us to decorate for 2 weeks, and then they're out on the curb. And fake trees aren't any better. So this was just this really cool, environmentally friendly way to still have a Christmas tree. And then, yeah, we replant them. And it was probably one of my favorite businesses, but it was a lot to run that along. It would always run parallel with another company. Cause again, it was just seasonal. It was November and December. And it was like the most crazy 8 weeks of my life because it would be that business and my current, whatever company I was running at the time. So there just came a point in 2013, I believe, or 14, where I had my wellness spa and I had that. And I just was like, oh my gosh, we can't do all of this. So yeah, and that leads to the other business. My favorite, probably my other favorite, was the wellness spa. So Wellness Spa started 12, exited in 2017, 2 locations, 30 employees, the #1 rated wellness spa in San Diego. So much fun to build that one from scratch. It was really cool. And it changed my life personally. That business changed my life more than any other business because, my diet was bad. Like I didn't know a lot about wellness, health and wellness. When I started that company, I just knew that I could shift kind of that industry because the industry was a little interesting back then. It was kind of a little more hippies and I don't know. I mean, now there's a lot of luxury wellness spas, which I'm excited to see that. But in 2012, that wasn't the case. So that was one of my favorites. And that's the one that had the most impact on my life personally.
It's amazing. It's definitely a varied resume. You had a luxury car rental business as well, which I saw. And
yes, that's a passion
of
mine.
I was curious how did you decide like which areas you wanted to go into? Because there doesn't really seem to be a consistent pattern there. Was it just what you loved at the time, or how did you really come to that decision?
The easy answer is I see a need in the marketplace and then I look for it and it's not there for myself. Like I'm my first client. Why doesn't this exist? And then I start asking around and then I try to get other people to do it. So I'm like, oh, why don't you do this? And this is almost every single business, even my current business, my tech company now. I had asked people for 6 months to build this technology. All my friends that were already in technology and they didn't want to do it. So that's my #1 is it's like I see a need in the marketplace or it's something that I would love to go to or have as a service. And then it doesn't exist. And then I end up doing it because I'm like the type of person I'm like, okay, fine, then I'm just going to do it because nobody else is doing it. And that would be one thing. #2 is it's always usually B2C. Every business, almost all of them have been business to consumer versus B2B. Again, the tech company now is technically B2B2C. So it's a little different. So yeah, I usually like consumer businesses. I like service related businesses. So again, rental cars is a service. Christmas trees is a service, cleaning is a service, wellness spa is a service. That's like a common theme. And then a lot of them have the eco-friendly environmental theme also because that's just always been a passion of mine, especially growing up in California. So I think those are the themes. I know it sounds crazy because that's the first question everybody asks is, okay, all your companies, like, are they all in the same industry? And I'm like, no, they're in completely different industries, but they have common themes.
I get it. Well, that's good. It's that's a great way to look for a business idea anyway. Look for a problem, try and get someone else to solve it, and if you can't do that, then just go ahead and do it yourself.
No, James.
You're the customer.
Yeah, no, James, you nailed it. Definitely, I think that would be my advice to people because some people do say, "Oh, do your passion." Was house cleaning my passion? No, like no way. So that advice is hard. Yeah, if it's your passion, then you'll love it every day. It'll make it a little bit easier. But you still want to lean more on solving a pain. I think that should be your #1 driver. If you're passionate, great. But there's a lot of things I'm super passionate about that aren't, even the luxury car business was hard. That's a passion of mine. But the margins weren't that great. So again, sometimes you have to decide on, solving a pain, better margins versus passion.
Yeah, totally got it. At least you would have got to drive around in some nice cars.
Oh, every day. That part was amazing.
That's awesome. So let's talk about co-living because it's a really fascinating subject area and something you're an expert in. So I was thinking maybe just for the benefit of the audience, if you could define exactly what co-living is, and then we could dive a bit deeper into some of the areas of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I always like to say that in co-living, it stands for community. So like without community, you cannot have co-living. Then you're just random roommates living together if there's no community under the same roof or in the same building. And so my definition is living together with intention. And usually there's one common theme, one thread that runs along everybody, but it could be super diverse, yet maybe one thing in common. So like for us, it's all entrepreneurs. So very diverse, guys, girls, different ages, coming from different backgrounds, yet we're all entrepreneurs. So we have that common thread amongst all of us, and we can relate with that. And that's what makes us get along so well. I've seen people like musicians, artists. There's so many different ways to co-live with people, but it's again done with intention. It's a community. It's very active. You can host events together. And I wrote a book last year called The CoLiving Code. So of course that goes into way more detail than we have time for on this podcast.
Available on Amazon?
Yes, available on Amazon for sure. And then we have a weekly podcast and show with the same name, The CoLiving Code. So people can watch YouTube interviews with operators from around the world and also actual people that co-live together, talking about their communities, talking about their journey, which is really, really cool.
That's awesome. So is it fair to say the main difference between having just a bunch of housemates and then co-living is that common thread, whether it's musicians, entrepreneurs, whatever the case may be? Is that the main difference between?
In all of my experiences, yes. However, there's a lot of communities where they don't have like a theme at all. And they just want like-minded people living together. And also the ages don't even matter. And I love this. They don't say like an age demographic. They say it's just a state of mind. So you can live in a co-living building in Europe where there's, I'm thinking one in particular where there's, 18-year-old college students upwards of like 80-year-olds, right? They're all living in this huge building together. And they're playing ping pong downstairs in the lobby together. And like, it's really cool to see. So again, that could be anybody, any age, but again, they know they're going to collectively live together. They're going to co-live, they're going to build community. They're going to hang out, talk. Again, you're not in America. Like it's like all these multi-unit buildings where you don't even know your next door neighbors. You don't even know their names and their door is right next to your door. I don't even know whether you share a wall. And that's been how Americans have been living for the last like 40, 50 years. I don't know like why it became so isolated. And now I think we're moving back to this like tribal shared economy with everybody sharing things nowadays. And I love it. I love it. It makes me so happy. And again, you don't even hear horror stories of co-living yet. Like, and I'm in it all. No, you really don't. Like sometimes I even Google and I look for them because I'm like, that's kind of surprising that this has been going on for a couple years now. And I don't hear these like horrible co-living horror stories, but you hear horrible roommate stories all the time.
That's interesting. I guess it must just be would you say it's just more because it's more deliberate, the people that are coming together rather than just random?
Yes, very deliberate, very intentional. The type of people that would want to co-live, like, is a specific type of person, I think.
Got it. That's awesome. And so how did you actually, because you're sort of known as an expert in the space, you've obviously written that book, The CoLiving Code, you mentioned before. How did you actually get into this whole industry? What was your kind of entry point into this?
I know everybody asks that. So like back up, maybe like I still had my wellness spa, and this is like 4 or 5 years ago. I told my mentor at the time, I said, because I lived with regular roommates that were working, great roommates, great people, but they were working 5 jobs. They hated the boss. They loved Fridays because of the weekend. They dreaded Mondays because they'd have to go back to work. And for an entrepreneur, it's the total opposite. So like, we love what we do. We work crazy hours. We live for Monday mornings because we get to go back at it. And, I just like all the complaining. I'm like, oh, I just don't like living with people that are complaining all the time. I told my mentor, I'm like, Henry, like, I wish I could live in one big house with all entrepreneurs. Like, and I wish we could outsource our lives, like have a chef that made our food because I never have time to make my food because I'm so busy, and somebody doing, this and that, kind of like the Tim Ferriss style of like outsourcing your life. And he immediately said, he's like, wait, Christine, he goes, I know somebody that just moved out of exactly what you're talking about. And again, we didn't use the word co-living back then. It was just like, hey, there's a house of all entrepreneurs in San Diego. I think my friend's moving out. You should go check it out. And then long story short, I think it was like a Thursday I saw the house and then moved in by Tuesday. And I didn't know any of the 5 guys at all. They were strangers. and loved living in that home. That was like 2015, 2016. And then started Kindred Quarters after I sold my spa. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to like do this on my own as a business, and start more houses. We did San Diego, and then we did Los Angeles, and then started the tech company. And now I full circle. Now I'm back in the original entrepreneur house. The very first one I'm back living at right now. Different guys. It's a whole different crew, but they're all close friends of mine. But it's the exact same house. Yeah. So that's kind of the full journey into co-living. But even then, like we didn't know it was called co-living back then. That word like just kind of came on the radar like 2 years ago for me.
Got it. That's amazing. And so I guess with Kindred Quarters, it sounds like, again, it was kind of you were scratching your own itch and no one else was, well, someone was doing, you kind of moved into that house, but then you sort of saw the potential of it and then ran with it. Is that kind of what happened there?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is funny, yeah.
Got it. And so how many houses did you say you have now for that?
So actually what's funny is I still have Kindred Quarters, the brand, but I don't have any houses under management currently because of the technology. I was in Europe for 5 months this year, living in Amsterdam, and I was, running the technology company. It's massive amount of, I know everybody thinks tech is so cool, and it was, I wanted to get into tech and I love technology. I attribute the success to all my prior companies to the software that we use. Mind Body Online for my wellness spa. We use Service CEO for the cleaning company. Without those platforms, we never would have scaled as fast as we did. We never would have been as efficient, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of fun now to build the actual platform for a brand new industry. I love that, but it is crazy hard and busy and nuts in like a totally different world, right? And again, I'm not complaining at all, but it's definitely crazy. The leases we had for Kindred Quarters, we luckily we did master leases, so we could just give the houses back to the San Diego one, the owner took back to put on Airbnb after 6 months, which we didn't know he was going to do that. So then we were bummed, and then we all moved, like half the house moved up to LA on the second house. And then that one, the owner, like once the technology company started taking off and I was running it remotely from Europe, I was like, okay, this is not going to work. Like I cannot run two companies at the same time, and especially on two different continents. It was insane. And so like, luckily the owner of the home was so cool and it worked out. But again, like if I want to have more houses in the future, I still have the brand. I could do that. But for now, I was like, okay, strictly Kindred, the software.
Yeah, got it. Go get that laser focus on this one project. Makes sense. Maybe you could talk a bit about what that is, Kindred.io, what the technology platform is, what you're hoping to achieve with it, and who's it for, essentially.
Oh, for sure. I love talking about Kindred. So let's see, we started a year ago. So again, my own itch, when we had the two homes running, we were using 11 different software applications to power the houses, which was ridiculous, like Stripe for payments, Slack for communication, Airbnb for bookings, Google Calendar for events. It was nuts. And so I asked my friends if they could build this. First, when I wrote the book, I asked people, hey, what software do you use? And every single person around the world said, Christine, we don't have anything, but we need something really bad. And I was like, oh my God, there's no software for this industry at all. Like, can't you guys hack together? They were just kind of hacking together things. And some of the bigger ones were using a PMS system, like a property management software. And that doesn't fit right. So they were all complaining. They were like, well, we're using this PMS system, but it's for property management. It's not for co-living. Or we're using hotel management software, but that doesn't fit right either. So Kindred is a hybrid of both. So we call it a CLMS, like a PMS, but CLMS for co-living management system. And we launched, I found the best technologist that I personally know in the world, out of San Diego, Rob, a good friend of mine. And I asked him, like, Rob, like, can you help me build this? What would it cost? And he's like, better than that, like, I'll jump on board. Let's build it together. And then his best friend, Renee, came on also as like our CTO. So the three of us started August of last year. We got into Techstars only like 3 months later. We got the notice that we were going to go to Amsterdam and for Techstars Europe, which was really cool. And so we got to be there, March, April, May of this year. I know everything's moved so fast because we're only like a little bit over a year. old. And yeah, so we just have built this massive platform, and essentially it's the pipes and like infrastructure for the entire industry. Because that was my other frustration was the bigger guys are building their own tech, right? Of course, it's the biggest competitive advantage. If you have the collective or common, these guys are going to build their own tech in-house because that's going to be their competitive advantage to scale quickly. But then a lot of the other big guys will call us separately and they'll want us to build their back end and just write like white label, private label Kindred, which we can totally do. So we built the software to do that. So we're talking with really big players to do just kind of back end, and then it's their front facing brand and logo and look and feel, which we're totally fine doing that. And yeah, so it's the management solution. It's all the bookings, reservations, communications with the residents, maintenance requests, everything to manage any operation. And I say we can manage anything from 5 beds up to 10,000 beds. And then the other side of the platform is the marketplace. So you can use your phone or you can use our platform online, and you could search for co-living home anywhere in the world through our directory. So very similar to Airbnb in that sense, because Airbnb, you can't just search co-living, right? And you can't see like the residents that live there, bios, videos, like all of that is on Kindred. And that was my passion. It's like, I want to like just search like, oh, I want to live in a co-living home in Madrid for 3 months. Like, can I just search on Kindred, and within a couple clicks, I can book it, just like ordering an Uber. Like, I don't like the technology is on our smartphones. That's what's so funny. Everything we're doing, like the digital lease signing, the 360-degree tours, everything, all those pieces of technology already exist on the smartphone. They're just not all on one platform. And that's what we're building every day. And we're super excited. So we launch next month. We have a firm that's doing the UX UI, like the redesign. Because of course my co-founders are engineers, they're not designers, and they did the best that they could. But we wanted like a refresh and just something that was really super user friendly, gorgeous to look at, easy to navigate. So that they're almost done. And yeah, we launch next month in November and start onboarding our huge waiting list of operators, which is really, really exciting. They've been so supportive. They've been so patient. I'm like, I'm so sorry, guys. I feel like it's taking forever. And they're like, no, it's fine. So very grateful for the amazing co-living operators around the world that we get to put on next month.
That's amazing. I'm curious to go, I guess, dive a little bit more into the business side of it, because when you say the operators that you're going to be onboarding, are they people who are now going to be using your technology to power their back end for their co-living situations? Or are these on the marketplace side of the people?
The operators. So the waiting list are all the operators that actually operate co-living operations, big and small. Ranging from like, some of them have 4,000 beds, some of them maybe just have 10. So all different sizes of operators. And we're starting we're going to go first. It's a global platform. So we have currency conversions and we have language cards. However, we're going to start specifically with the US and Europe. Those are the 2 biggest markets. Those are the 2 markets we understand the most. And then pull everybody else on as quick as we can right after. So yeah, that's who's onboarding first, but simultaneously the users can use the platform. I mean, the users can use the platform right now.
Yeah, I did see that. That's amazing. And how did you actually, was it literally just talking to all these operators? Is that kind of how you actually worked out what features to add in? You kind of got interest from these operators and then built the platform based on their feedback, and then they just organically were crying out for this need, so they wanted to go on it. Is that how it kind of played out pretty organically?
We've done a ton of market research, like myself personally, and this included a 63 questionnaire that took them like an hour to fill out. We've had over 50 operators fill that out. I've had maybe upwards of 100 video chats, like recorded video chats, where I'm kind of talking through like, what are their pain points, what technology are they currently using, showing them ours. We had also 7 beta testers through the Techstars program, and even afterwards, that have given us feedback on the platform as we're building. So like insane amount of research, insane amount of feedback. Like I don't want to just build it for me, right? I'm building it for everybody. So I need everybody's feedback, and they've been just so gracious in giving that. And it's amazing. Like we're really big on like super serving the customers. That's me and my co-founders have said that since day one. Like we want to super serve all the operators, build the most amazing platform that they can use. I mean, this is powering their entire company. This is processing all their rent payments. Like it cannot break. It cannot have bugs. Like it has to work. And that's, and again, and I think in the software world these days, there's some incredible platforms out there for other services that work, right? And that don't, that you call an Uber or Lyft and like you push a button and it shows up. So it's like, it's exciting.
That's amazing. I'm curious what you think. So in your opinion, where do you think the co-living industry is as a whole? Because I'll be honest, before I came across you and started looking more into you, because I found it really interesting, I didn't really know about co-living before that. So are we still very early in this industry, or is it set to go through a massive growth period soon? Like, what's your kind of thoughts on where we're at there?
No, so Australia got a little left behind. And no, but you guys are getting it now. I know, right? You guys, what's going on? No, there's some amazing ones that are starting to open there. And so I'm excited to see that finally make its way there. So you guys, the trends kind of like slowly make their way there. And so, so don't feel bad. So, but in a whole, like 2019 was a huge growth year. I'm on record saying, which I think it's close, but I think co-living is going to be its own asset class, just like student accommodations. I think any day now. I said before the end of the year, and so we're getting close, but and it's just massive. I mean, you're talking about student, and how that's happening and how that tipping point is happening is because now like student accommodations is like rebranding to co-living, right? So they already have thousands and thousands of beds. Now they're just like, oh, let's build a tighter community and let's add some events and let's make it quote unquote co-living. And that's actually a really easy transition. Then you've got huge, massive multi-family unit apartment communities that are doing the same thing. They're going to have a harder time, I think, jumping that, it's a lot of work to activate community. And I think they're going to find that out, but hopefully, again, I'm super supportive of them doing that in the right way. It's been a massive increase in beds coming online. And again, fastest growing markets being Europe and being the US, but then India, they have a huge shortage. I think it's something like I read somewhere 5 million student beds they're going to be short in the next 5 years. So it's insane. They were projecting this to be $93 billion market just in India alone.
Wow, that's crazy. And it's funny you mentioned the kind of transition to co-living, because I've noticed as well, even here, there's a lot of new apartment complexes that go up and they try to throw in like a communal area, like with a barbecue or a pool or something. And you can see they're sort of starting to think like that, like bring community, and it's sort of the first steps. It's not very effective because they don't have any sort of like events or kind of actively trying to build that community, but it is sort of going that way. So I totally see that for sure. So that's awesome, and like you're perfectly placed by the sounds of it with your product, because you're going to be the software that powers this industry as it continues to grow, which is extremely exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out over the next few years. But sort of coming up on the end of the interview here, Christine, I really appreciate your time today, but just want to know, I guess, obviously Kindred, the software platform, is your main project at the moment. But have you got any like big goals in the next like 6 months? You mentioned you were making it live next month. That's probably the biggest one in the short term. Is that kind of all your focus at the moment?
Yeah, that's my number. I can't wait. That's the part of the business that I get the most excited about. Like for sure, we had, and some people already know this publicly, but we had a letter of intent to be acquired over the summer for my software company, which is crazy because we're only 10 months in. and it was, it was a European company. And so, just having that validation that early was crazy. But at the same time, it felt super premature because as an entrepreneur, my passion and my drive is to provide, like, is solving a pain, right? We've talked about that earlier in this interview. Like, that is my driver, is to like create something in the marketplace that didn't exist before and to solve a pain. So it felt premature because I was like, well, shoot, like I didn't solve the pain yet. Yeah, I can join this team and we're going to solve it together. But I'm like, I don't know, so I'm super excited to actually get people using the software, seeing those transactions running through, simplifying their lives, getting them off of 11 different software applications or whatever they are using and they don't like, and then seeing the bookings happen. And like I've said this since day one, and my co-founders know, it's so funny. Like my number one thing is like if I just let's say I'm traveling somewhere in the world and I overhear some strangers talking about co-living, like, oh, I really want to go co-live somewhere. I'm going to go to California, but I really want to find a co-living place. And maybe I overhear somebody say, oh, just use Kindred. I will lose it. That is like my number one goal in life right now, is like to overhear somebody just saying that. And again, I've been lucky enough to like, that's happened in San Diego because again, they're local companies. So a lot of times I overhear conversations of people talking about cleanology or talking about adopt a Christmas tree. And I get so excited, but again, that's local. But if on a global level that happens, I hear a company I started, like somebody mentions a name, I'm just going to lose it. So to me, that's like those are my goals. I know they're silly, but I mean, it means a lot to me to kind of build something that didn't exist before.
I get it. I totally get it. That's amazing. And is there anything I haven't asked you or just anything you want to make sure that you pass on to the audience before we finish up here, Christine?
Yeah, I mean, I guess some of my words of advice too is just, definitely, I mean, it's a lot of work. It's no matter what, like just keep pushing. I think resilience is really important. And consistency. Those would be like my two tips for people listening that, are getting into entrepreneurship or thinking about it. Just being extremely consistent, extremely resilient, reading as much as you possibly can, going on YouTube. Like, please do not think you need to spend all this money on courses to learn business. You do not. You can go on YouTube and you can search, or on podcasts like this one, right? Listen, like every moment of every day, like I'm in the car, I'm like traveling, like I'm listening to other people's stories because I learned so much from how other people, like their journey in business. So yeah, that would be those biggest pieces of advice is podcasts, YouTubes, audiobooks. I read tons and tons. I have so many business books. It's insane.
What's a good one you've read in the past year, or a favorite one?
Good question. Oh, I have so many. But in this last year, The Hard Things About Hard Things.
Yeah.
Ben Horowitz. Have you heard of that book?
Yes, I have.
Yes.
It's a good one.
That was just a couple weeks ago. So because again, it was like and I love, so, again, in different stages of business, you have different problems and you need different help. So sometimes a book won't work at a certain period of time because you're like, oh, it has nothing to do with what we're doing, right now. Like for me, I would never read like on culture. I wouldn't read a book right now on like team culture and that kind of stuff until we scale our team bigger. Right now, it's just like, okay, like getting the software, getting people using the software, getting that out. So, and that's the hardest part. So my friend was like, you have to read this book, The Hard Things About Hard Things. And yeah, it was like clutch. So I was like, thank you so much for recommending that book at the right time. Bob Iger, which is the CEO of Disney, his autobiography just came out a couple weeks ago. And I read that also, the audiobook. That's really good. He's an amazing individual. And so I liked that book. That was a fun weekend read. So my all-time favorite book is The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And I read that back in like 2005, I think. And that book changed my life.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like that was kind of the foundation.
Delegation. Yeah, it was for sure the foundation. Changed my life, taught me how to delegate, taught me how to take vacations and not worry about my business. Yeah. I mean, most of your listeners have probably already heard of that book.
It gets recommended a few times, but that's a good thing. So I love that. Learn from stories from other people, read books at relevant times to you as well, and just stay resilient and consistent. I think that's good advice. So thank you for that. Well, what's the best way for people to connect with you, Christine, if people want to see what you're up to, in your life and in your business and everything you're doing, check out the book. What's the best way for people to say hello?
I'm great on LinkedIn if anybody ever wants to reach out with a question on LinkedIn. So that's the platform I use the most. And then of course, like definitely go to YouTube, type in the CoLiving code. Again, it's not like Christine talking the whole time, luckily. It's like these amazing operators and investors and real estate developers and just industry leaders in co-living, just the most amazing people around the world that come on the show and they talk about their journey for, it's usually 30 minutes roughly. So that shows every Wednesday, and it's on SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. But I think YouTube's fun because it's video and you get to actually see the person and their mannerisms, and it feels like you almost get to know them. So I love video for that reason. So yeah, those are the best ways to see me or hear from me or listen.
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. I'll make sure we link them all up so people can easily find them. But Christine, this is amazing. It's fascinating. Co-living is something that, as I mentioned before, I hadn't really stumbled across, been out here in Australia, but it's great to now become more aware of what's going on. And I think it's solved such a great problem, and it's really exciting what you're doing with Kindred. You're really well placed to capture this growth of this industry moving forward. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your journey. And I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of value from everything you've done. So thank you very much.
You're so welcome, James. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this interview with Christine. Hope you got a lot of value from it. If you did, I've got a quick favor to ask. If you use Apple Podcasts, can you go into the app and leave this show a rating and also a review? That would really help me out because it helps with the show ranking and helps more people discover the show and the guests that are on it. And even if you don't use Apple Podcasts, you can still help me. Just take a screenshot of the app you're using to listen to this, post that to Instagram stories and tag me in that so I can reshare it. My handle's at jharris, which is JHARRISS. And if you could do one of those two things, it would mean the world and really help me out. Thanks for listening and have a great day.